Hello everybody, Michael the Librarian of Magic here, finding and cataloging the magical and pointing you to it. Today is October the 4th. I'm back again with another villain drawing in this year's series of Drawing a Villain a Day for the month of October. I'm just getting right through these. We're already four in, and these, making this series is always fun and interesting for me. I hope it is for you. It always flies by when I do it. Without, further delay, we're going to jump into today's villain, which is a very interesting one. That I haven't got a chance to do yet, and that is the Horned King from the Black Cauldron. And I am really, really happy with the way this drawing turned out. I took a little bit more time with it, and it's just such a cool design. It's so creepy looking. I love stuff like that. He's just, especially in the pantheon of Disney villains, this movie is often forgotten. The Black Cauldron from 1985. And as a result, so is this villain. But what a good one. I mean, he's so creepy and evil. So it's very interesting to have him here. The Black Cauldron itself probably deserves its own video someday of me sort of detailing some of the ins and outs of that movie and the process that went into it. It is mentioned a little bit. There's a pretty good documentary that you can watch on Disney Plus called Waking Sleeping Beauty, which is sort of about that era of the Disney studio and how they were sort of going through some trouble and trying to rebound before what eventually became known as the Disney Renaissance, when they started making movies like The Little Mermaid and Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast. But before that, they were in a really interesting experimental era, and movies like The Black Cauldron ended up coming out, and it was this is like the only PG film, I believe, in the animated canon. Anyway, like I said, that kind of gets its own video. But if you want to learn more about just the film itself, that is one direction you could go. Check out that documentary. There's some information in there. This character was animated and sort of designed by a group of people that includes Phil Niblink, John Lasseter, yes, that John Lasseter, who eventually went on to work heavily with Pixar. Tim Burton, yes, that Tim Burton, the director, he kind of got his start with Disney in the animation department, so he did work on helping to develop this character as well. A lot of people don't probably know that about Tim Burton. And then also Ron Husband and Steve E. Gordon, I believe, also worked on this character some, but they all did a really great job of making it just look so awful and creepy. The character was based on a series of books called The Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander. It's sort of a Welsh legend or story, fantasy tale. And this character, the Horned King, as it was being developed, was sort of an amalgamation of things from the book. There's a character called Aron, who's like the Death Lord, and that's the main bad guy in the book. And initially they were going to put that villain in the film, The Black Cauldron, but ultimately they decided to create this character instead because it has horns. That was pretty much the decision they made. They wanted it to be look kind of like Maleficent or Chernabog. They were more interested in having a character with horns, really. So that's why they went for that. And then they kind of combined elements of the character, the original Death Lord Aron, into this, and they kind of made this character like a lich or a lich king. And there's some dialogue in the movie that essentially alludes to the fact that like the spirit of Aron is in the Horned King anyway, or in the coming from the cauldron, and that this is sort of an avatar of that spirit. So he's kind of there in the background, like a Sauron in the Lord of the Rings type of situation. But anyway, that's kind of, the complicated goings-on of that. But he's really horrible. He's got these horns, green rotting flesh, and sort of a skeletal appearance. He's ultimately trying to find the Black Cauldron, and use its powers to unleash an army of these things called Cauldron-born, which are like these deathless, evil things. And he wants to take over the world. And he's very dark. There's not a lot of comic relief with the Horned King. He pretty much doesn't have any jokes. He doesn't have a song. He's they play it pretty straight with this one, which is relatively unique among Disney villains, that he doesn't really have any sort of comic banter, hardly at all. And like I said, no song. Musically, when he appears on screen or whatever, he does have an interesting leitmotif in the score that was written by the late great Elmer Bernstein, which you may be familiar with his work if you are fans of the original film Ghostbusters from 1984. He did the score for that as well, and that's just music that stuck with me because it's one of my favorite movies of all time, and I know his music and his style from that movie, so he's one of those composers that I kind of know when I hear because I've seen Ghostbusters so many times. The villain, the Horned King, has a really graphic death scene where, like, his, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the Black Cauldron, he dies, and he gets, like, his skin ripped off and stuff like that. And he was I read an interesting tidbit that he was the first villain to have his death shown on screen since Maleficent, 26 years prior to the making of this movie. In between, they either weren't making the type of movies that had a necessary villain death in the story, or they just weren't showing them in the films. So it's kind of interesting. The Horned King was voiced by the late great John Hurt, and you're probably familiar with John Hurt from he was in a lot of famous things. If you're into nerd stuff like me, you'll recognize him from a bunch of stuff. His Disney kind of bona fides, he was the narrator, Mr. Narrator, in the Tigger movie. He voiced a character named Felix in the movie Valiant, which is about, like, pigeons, birds. And he was also in a live-action Disney movie called Night Crossing from 1979. Or not from 1979, from the 90s, I believe. But it's about an event that took place in 1979. It's based on a true story about a couple of families in East Germany when the Berlin Wall was still standing who made a makeshift hot air balloon to be able to fly over the Berlin Wall and get to safety and freedom on the other side. And he was in that movie. He was knighted. He was Sir John Hurt later in his life for a bunch of other work that he did outside of Disney as well that he was really well known for. He played John Merrick in the film The Elephant Man, which is also based on a true story about the life of John Merrick, for which I believe he was nominated, if not won, an Academy Award. I think he was nominated at any rate. He was in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. He plays kind of a doddering archaeologist who's like a mentor of Indy, who gets lost in the jungle and stuff, and they find him partway through the film. He has a decent little role as that. He plays Ollivander, the wand expert in the Harry Potter series. He plays Trevor, in the Hellboy series, who's sort of the father figure of Hellboy in those films. And very famously, which a lot of people may recognize him from, he plays Gilbert Kane in the original Alien movie, and he's the guy who gets the chest-bursting alien popping out of his midsection in that movie, which is an extremely famous scene. And he also reprised that same scene in Mel Brooks' Spaceballs. He was also in that and did the chest-bursting thing all over again for Mel Brooks. So in one of those projects or another, I'm sure that you recognize the work of the great John Hurt, and this is one of those roles that not a lot of people know about in general, and certainly would not know that he did as a result. So that's kind of what's up with that. So yeah, that's a little bit about the Horned King and some interesting information that I found about that. Like I said, there's a lot more about the movie. It's a very interesting era in Disney animation, which maybe I'll do some more videos about in the future. But there's kind of a lot of interesting things going on there. And as you could tell from the list of animators I gave, there's a lot of interesting people working at the studio at that time. So it was really cool to draw this one because it's a very neat character, and it was cool to just sort of learn some information about it. So hopefully you find that interesting. Maybe you want to go check out the Black Cauldron. That's available on Disney+. It's a really good one for this time of year because it's really creepy and weird. It is kind of high fantasy stuff, so if you're not interested in sort of a sorcery, wizards, might and magic kind of fantasy thing, if that's not your genre, then this movie might not be, for you. But if you're into that sort of stuff and you want to see some creepy characters and just a really interesting, unique, bizarre animated Disney movie, the likes of which we'll probably never see again, check out the Black Cauldron. So hopefully you found that interesting. Hopefully you enjoyed your drawing. Enjoyed my drawings, rather. I was particularly proud of this one, and it was really fun to do. So thanks as always for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with another one of these as we continue through the month of October. A different villain every day for the entire month. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.